Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Gala. I am your booky, nerdy VTuber. I play games, I draw, and I nerd out about the books that I'm currently reading. If this seems like your cup of tea, please subscribe and join the family. Today's topic is the Morganville Vampires series. Disclaimer. This review is my opinion, and just because I like or don't like the series, book, trope, and or characters doesn't mean that has to be yours. If you want to share your opinion of this book or series, comment below are absolutely welcome. Just remember, be nice. The Morganville Vampires is a 15-book series by Rachel Kane. 16 if we're wanting to consider the last extra book, which I have, but I have not read yet, so it will not be a part of this. It was written and published between the years of 2006 to 2013. It was considered one of the many vampire books that was beloved by the time. Each book is roughly about 250 pages. See for exact numbers here. But total number being about 4,252 pages, depending on the font of your book. That was at least the case that it was for me. Okay, so weaknesses for these vampires include silver, sun, wood. They do imply that there are fake weaknesses that they put in to kind of throw off the potential vampire killers of the story, which those do consist of crosses and garlic. Other notes is for involving their weaknesses. Obviously, the older they are, the harder it is to kill them. A young vampire can totally die by a stake through the heart, while for any semblance of an older vampire, it will take a huge it will paralyze them but not kill them, and then you'll have to wait for either silver or the sun to finish them off. Appearance, they don't sparkle. Hate to break it to you. And it's been described that their skin goes kind of gray. There is a few times in the book where they bring up darker skin tones and been like they would have been black if they were still human, implying that they have been grayed out, and just overall, like, everyone just looks like an unhealthy color of dead and gray. Trigger warning, obvious, violence. There's quite a bit of violence in the story. And book 1 through 8 consists of a lot of more high school level drama with via bullying. There is a attempt of forced horizontal mambos, but it does not go very far. There is some mention of drug use, of vampire drug use, so it's not like normal drugs, but it still causes one girl to have an overdose. So, fair warning, there you go. Now, for the sake of just how long this series is, I will not go through the entirety and explaining the storyline of the Morganville Vampires, because there is simply too much to cover in one series, and I, as a person who has had to read all 15 books, am bound to get some information either wrong or completely forgotten altogether. So for the sake, we're gonna just go over the ground rules. We're gonna go over my favorite characters, and just the overall long arching storyline. We start off with Claire Danvers, a 16-year-old girl who is so smart. She gets into college super young. She's too young, so her parents do not want her to go outside of Texas, so they have her stay into the closest college to them, which happens to be in Morganville, where she gets bullied so hard. Claire gets bullied so hard by Monica that Monica bullies Claire so much throughout the series. Like, this isn't even, but like in the beginning of the book, almost straight up tries to murder Claire, which causes her to be scared of going back to her dorm. Rightfully so. Um, which leads her to an ad for a new roommate at the glass house. Pause. For some reason, when I first read this back when I was like in middle school, I was dumb enough to think that the glass house meant the house was made entirely of glass. I'm so stupid. It's Michael's last name. I read up to book 5 thinking the glass house was actually made of glass. So at this time, Claire does not know that the vampires exist and that vampires infiltrate this town. And actually takes a bit of time to accept it, 'cause she is a very science gal. She's a science girly. And but once she does, she like jumps right in to like being in the middle of every single conflict in Morganville. And that is like the majority of this story, is her not being able to separate herself from the needs of Morganville. She feels the need to protect everyone that is dear to her, vampire or human. And that does consist of obviously her boyfriend, who is a vampire hating, anger issue having kind of guy, Shane Collins. Shane is trauma, and it gives him a lot of angie issues, and that is constantly being used and abused throughout the entirety of the series. It gets a little too much for me after book 8, but I accept it. I go with it. It's all right. I accept it. I don't like Shane for me, but I accept that Claire likes Shane. It means more Myron for me. We'll go back to Myron in a minute, because I can talk about that man forever. Then for the other roommates, we have Eve, who is the like traditional goth girly with a bleeding heart. She is one of the most emotionally invested characters, and she's just so caring and so sweet. And she works at a coffee shop and has an abusive little brother who's a little shit. The last but not least of the roommates in Claire's life and of the main characters is dun 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 Michael Glass. He is the owner of the glass house, and in the beginning of the story is a ghost turned into a vampire. He's a guitar playing sweetheart, and he is the exact opposite of Shane, in the fact that he tries to solve everything with words before resulting to fists. At least until later on, when he becomes more vampire-esque in like ideology, which is not even as much. He's very, very human feeling of a vampire. Book 1 through 8, in my opinion, is more for like a high school kind of audience, like upper high school, as it still has like petty drama to it. Like, Monica's need to bully is more prevalent from book 1 through 8. And I think that's why they broke up the books the way they did. They ended up combining books 1 through 8 into a more collective story together, and then from book 9 to the end is their own separate things. So I think that is why, is because afterwards she's able to delve into more not quite adult topics, because they don't show any horizontal mambo scenes, but they literally show like everything up to that. They show a lot of foreplay and have a lot of adult topics, which is why I'm still hesitant to talk about the fact that it was probably meant for teenagers. But yeah, I feel like after book 9, she ends up being Rachel Kane ends up being able to really make the story as crazy as she wants it to. It's also where they add other characters' POVs, like Shane. Shane as the first person we get POVs with, and it actually is the start of me getting genuinely annoyed with both Shane as a character and this type of writing style. Listen, I might not be the biggest fan of a first person book, but if you're going to have a first person book, it's got to all be first person. And in this case, this book is in third person, except when it's through everybody else's POV. Shane's POV, it's first person. Amelie's POV, it's first person. Eve's, Michael's, literally everyone's POV, other than Claire's, is first person. And that is so annoying to me. I'm still willing to go through it because I genuinely loved the story. I love the worlds that it's in, and I cannot recommend this story enough to people if they like vampire books. It's just enough cliche with a good enough of a twist on things, and I genuinely love the character development Claire possesses within the 2-3 years that this series takes place in. But it takes I think this book needs a lot of patience, not even just because of how big this series is, but just sometimes the story takes place and you're like, I'm sorry, what? But then you just go for the ride. Just that's like, yeah, that's the story in a nutshell. That's the books in a nutshell is we're going on a roller coaster. It might not make sense at first, but you'll learn to accept it. I guess afterward, so the whole topic takes place of kind of the world of Morganville and how it operates outside of uh the normal human quote unquote modern, because this is written between the time frames of the late 2000s early 2010s, uh in how vampires could theoretically remain secret and why they would, and how truly a government would change if run by vampires. I think it's incredibly well done of a motivator, and I love the yes, vampires can easily be pointed as the monsters, but a lot of times the humans are just as bad, if not worse. The humans' first movement is both makes complete sense in the storyline and then is also some of the worst group of individuals. Now, let's talk about my favorite characters. Out of the main four characters, Eve is my favorite. I love the goth motif. I love her range of emotions that she shares and compels. Her I love her will. I love her character so much. Every time she shows up, I'm like, "Yes, girl. Yes." But but out of all of my favorite characters, I feel like, according to what little I've Googled on the internet, seems to be a mass majority of the Morganville Vampire series, like, fan base. Their favorite and my favorite seem to be Myron, the bipolar, crazy vampire scientist who ends up being Claire's boss. He's so he is described as a beautiful man with longish black hair, and he was a model level of beautiful, but then he's super fucking crazy one moment and then super sweet the next, and he's so, oh, I cannot describe. I can go on for hours how much I love this man and his weird fashion habits. If if this was a story written in modern, like written now, I would totally request Rachel Kane to just make a whole side story of just Myron Myron's adventures. That it's great. Now, okay, now after my rant of all of that, and if you've gotten this far, thank you. I'm sorry. Next time, I promised my next book review will be more structured than this. What do I like about this series? Other than just the overall arcing of the world that I've explained, I really love. I also really like that Claire doesn't date a vampire, especially with that time frame. It was very popular for the main love interest to fall in love with the vampire or with the werewolf or with the angel. Um, So it is incredibly refreshing to have a person be surrounded by this world of supernatural, but never be in love with the supernatural main character. We still have the romance of the supernatural being with the mortal character, but it's not Claire. In fact, Claire dates a anti-vampire guy, and that does lead to its own issues, but it was a definitely refreshing pace, and I'm sure it was even more refreshing back when it was just being written as as a thing. Um, what did I not like about the Morganville Vampires? As I previously stated, was the main one of my main issues with the series was mostly um the flip-flop between first person and third person. Not only was it very jarring, I also just think there it's a lack of consistency with that kind of stuff. That being said, it is fixed in book 15, and if you only read book 1 through 8, you won't have that problem at all, which is an entirely valid option, by the way. No one would blame you. Um, but yeah, that can definitely get annoying. Another thing that I don't particularly like is the constant use of Shane's both anger issues, his insecurities, and his hatred of vampires as a plot point. Especially when he actively starts trying to be better for Claire, trying to not hate vampires because Michael is a vampire and that's his dude bro, that's his brother. It's even like an as like a storyline, and I can get that it could get really hard to retrain some biases you were raised with, but once he is like getting better, they use it as a point to like poking the bear, where they give him kind of vampire blood drugs that make him angry at vampires and makes him say hurtful things to Claire and Michael, and his insecurities about how Michael and Claire would hook up behind Shane and Eve's back, which is not used once, but twice as a plot point to anger everybody involved, and it's so frustrating. Overall, just They could always use, and it was so reoccurring that it got to a point where it was like, oh, Shane's in jail again is equivocal to, oh, Shane's mad at Claire again for something that she didn't do. It got frustrating, personally. But hey, that is just my opinion. Now, do I recommend this series? Yes, 1,000%. That being said, 15 books, 16, again, if you want to read the extras, could be extremely overwhelming for a lot of individuals, and that is completely understandable. So, reading the first eight books, which are a little bit more digestible, I highly recommend. If you could just read book one through eight, and then you're like, okay, that's a good end. I'm done. That is fine because they do lead it to make it seem like they were only going to do eight books and then be done with it. But then I guess maybe they were making too much money. And anyway, they continued on. So if you only read book one through eight, perfectly valid, perfectly understandable. But if you want some some magical bullshit to take place where you're like, what is happening? But you enjoy every second of it. I highly recommend reading all the rest of the series. Like absolutely. Like I can't recommend it if you're under the age of 18 because there is some, like I said, some not safe for work topics brought up, nothing explicitly written. So if you as a parent is trying to figure out if this book is acceptable for your child. Also, I love Myron. If anything, if I can tell you to read this story for literally anything, read it for Myron. I certainly did. Hey, if you guys made it to the end of the video, that is great, fantastic. I appreciate it so much. If you liked the video, like and give me a comment. Let me know what you thought about it. Tell me if you had any differing opinions about the character's story or whatever it may be. I definitely love these kind of conversations. Also, if you have a book that you want me to read and review, comment down below. I love reading new books. I've read literally 40 books just this year, and my goal was 50. Let's see if I can reach it. And if you want to see more of my gaming stuff, I do stream every Sunday on Twitch, twitch.tv/Galarealm. Thank you guys so much for watching. May your drinks always be bubbly, and may your pillows be cool. Bye.